Hey everybody, here's an interesting game from 1928 between Gotterson and Fall. Gotterson has the white pieces and Fall the black, and it's a French defense, and it goes like this. White plays e4, black plays e6, white plays d4, black plays d5, white plays e5, and black plays c5, white plays c3. Now black takes off the d-pawn, white recaptures, and now black comes down with the bishop to b4 and checks, and white blocks the check with knight to c3. Now black brings out his knight to c6, attacking the pawn on d4. So white brings out its own knight to f3 and protects it. Black now develops the black knight, the king knight, to e7. White develops the king bishop up to d3. Black now castles, and believe it or not, it's time for the start of the attack. White decides to sacrifice the bishop and plays bishop takes h7 check. Black accepts the sacrifice, and white now plays knight to g5 check. Now at this point, black could just retreat the king back to g8, but then of course white would play queen to h5, which would pretty much end the game. So instead, black brings the king out to g6. And now white plays h4, threatening, of course, to play the pawn to h5 with check. And at this point, believe it or not, black actually tries to give the sacrificed piece back. He plays knight takes d4, hoping that white will just immediately recapture the knight on d4. But white says, no thank you, I've got a better idea. And he plays queen to g4, threatening an incredible discovered check by moving the knight. So, black really plays the only move he has, which is pawn up to f5. Now, white has a couple of options. They can go ahead and take the pawn en passant with the pawn on e5, or he can just move the queen. But instead, he goes ahead and moves the pawn up to h5 and gives check. And the king now only has one square to move to. He has to move king to h6. Now, of course, white plays the knight on g5 and takes the pawn on e6 with a discovered check from his bishop on c1. Check. And black only has two options. He can move his king back to h7, but then of course white just plays queen takes g7 checkmate. So the only move he can play is the pawn to g5. And here's what makes this game so unique. White now captures the pawn en passant and gives double check and mate. Pretty unique thing. And I suppose that's why the game is interesting to me, and I hope you found it interesting too. I'll see you next time.